Hey everyone, and welcome to An Operator's Blog. This episode is going to be a must watch for all you vertical AI founders out there. And we will be discussing an area which I think is boring and unsexy to a lot of founders, but is actually a burning pain point for enterprises all across the world and is a massive opportunity in the application layer, which is compliance of all the things. Joining me today to discuss this is Girish Redekar, co-founder of Sprinto. Sprinto is a unified AI-powered compliance platform that lets enterprises seamlessly and swiftly manage all their compliances, ranging from SOC to HIPAA to GDPR to ISO and a lot of other compliances. Girish is a two-time founder. Before this, he started RecruiterBox in the HRTech space, sold it to TurnRiver Capital, and he has been in the ecosystem for a long time. And Girish, I love the way you describe yourself as a founder who picks up problem statements that other software developers shy away from. So I think you are the perfect guest to discuss compliance.
Thanks, Ramitra. Thanks for the generous introduction, and I'm excited to be here.
Great. So let's get right down to it. So Girish, I'll straight away go to the brass tacks, right? And I want you to kind of step outside from kind of your role as a vertical AI founder, right? And just I think this is more as an observer in the ecosystem, right? So you are now kind of seeing a lot of parts of the AI ecosystem come of age, right? So you have agents, you have co-pilots, you are founders building in the infrastructure layer. Of course, there are all the hyperscalers and the foundational companies. What part of the AI ecosystem, from your vantage point, do you feel is kind of underhyped? It's still not in the zeitgeist of VCs and founders and Twitter, right? But which is actually delivering a lot of real value for customers on the ground.
That's an interesting question. So, you know, like I'm old enough to have seen like a few technology waves, including the first dawn of the internet. Then basically we had kind of like the mobile revolution and now AI. And in each of these waves, it's funny when you let them play out for long enough. There are some things that we thought were really, really exciting, which where we realize over a period of time that their impact is overstated, and there are other things which we didn't really think of as exciting or game changing, but over a period of time, the effects compound. And uh, uh, I honestly feel like AI is still at a very, very early stage to sort of make any sort of bets around what's overhyped, what's underhyped, or there's just a lot of froth, a lot of unknowns as of now. And the only thing that I at least tell myself is to have a certain degree of intellectual humility, so to speak, about and be okay with the fact that hey, not all of these things are known. So honestly, I can't quite place my bets on whether it's going to be the application layer, the agents, the co-pilots, the infra that's going to become large, or is going to be like uh, you know the people who are working on the fundamental platforms itself and the LLMs itself that are going to be big. Whereas they're going to be like massive commoditization and where they're going to have real winners. Honestly, I'm not a venture capitalist. I know a few things about my space where I'm fairly deep into, but I honestly don't have much of an general commentary on the space itself. I'm a student of this as much as you and anybody else are. Um, to the extent that I can talk about the space that we are in, I I feel like uh, you know agents in general are like a massive leverage than co-pilots, and I'm not saying anything profound here. This is a reasonably well established fact in the application layer, and I can the other sort of the other place where I have a little bit of uh, insight into is the way we use AI internally as a company. Sprinto has a few hundreds of employees today, and there are definite places where we are seeing a lot more leverage because of AI. And DevTools is clearly one of the largest one of them. It is amplifying a lot of internal velocity with which we ship, with which we work, and those things. So again, I know I didn't quite answer your question. But my larger point is I don't know. Like I'm learning about this every single day, and things are changing so fast that what you thought to be true like a couple of weeks ago is suddenly proven wrong, and you just have to basically uh, refresh your mental model about what you think is working as of today. So it's exciting times to be in, to be honest. Things aren't quite static.
No, totally. I completely share your sentiment. I mean, so this is the part which is also exciting, but also frightening, and
Yes.
so you got to kind of stay ahead of the curve. But we'll come back to, I think, what kind of course you are seeing as you're building out Sprinto. But I was actually very intrigued to understand your backstory, right? I mean, typically, as any founder out there, if you speak to them, they wouldn't think of, hey, you wake up in the morning and you want to build like a compliance company, right? So, and your previous startup was also kind of in a different space. So I'm sure there is an interesting backstory there. Walk us through that.
Sure. Uh, I think it starts from the fact that I'm primarily a programmer and an engineer first. I love building things. And my previous company was in the recruiting space. We built what is called as an applicant tracking system. It was a company called RecruiterBox, and fundamentally think of it as a system of record or a CRM for hiring. It just tracks everything that needs to happen with incoming candidates, who you've interviewed, collecting feedback about them, etc., etc. So it's a bookkeeping system for that. And like you rightly pointed out, this has nothing to do with compliance or anything else. We were growing this business. We grew it to a certain size. But one of the interesting things that was happening as we were growing that business is, as we started going up market, you start getting asked questions around security due diligence. It's fundamentally SaaS or AI means that my data is on your service, and increasingly I want some assurance that you're going to keep this data safe and secure. So I have questions about the security and the privacy of this. That's like the fundamental thing that happens in SaaS. And as we started growing to larger and larger companies, we started getting asked some of these compliances, and sometimes over and above that, you will also get asked like the security questionnaires. I don't know if you've ever been faced with that, but fundamentally these are things that run into hundreds of questions, sometimes over 1,000, and they are no fun. Like I wouldn't wish them on my worst enemies, but you got to basically fill them out, and since these typically get associated with larger accounts and enterprise buyers, like you as founders, you will bend over backward to whatever they need. Long story short, we were going through a bunch of these, security due diligences. We were being asked about, about our security posture and compliances like SOC 2, ISO 27001, etc. And we did pretty much what every founder at that time would do, which is ask around, what do we do about this? I had a consultant to help us get to these certifications. And as an engineer, I was, these things sort of fell into my lap. I was trying to see how to sort of make sure we comply with these things. The long story short is that I like the bits that were helping us become more secure and sort of attach certain degree of formality to what we were doing as security practices. I absolutely hated the bits that just seemed paper pushing and just documenting stuff. And, it didn't seem to quite be adding a lot of value, but was necessary in order to sort of prove this to like an external auditor. So these compliances typically involve an external third-party auditor and so on and so forth. And to be perfectly honest, it's not like the idea to do a startup around this sort of came at that point. Right? We did what was necessary, and we eventually sold that company, like you pointed out. And then there was this about a year and a half between that and us starting as a new startup. And both I and my co-founder, who co-founded the previous startup as well, when we were thinking about what to do next and what are some of the ideas that that we wanted to work on, this was one of the few ideas that we had. And I really like the way you pointed it out. Like I think both of us have both I and my co-founder have a soft spot for these boring and sexy problems that are quietly running the wheels of business and that nobody wants to quite touch with like a 10-foot pole, but they do add a lot of value. And this seemed like a very, very interesting problem from that standpoint, in the sense that we have clearly seen why it is important. because it is sort of like opening the doors to an enterprise sale as for you as a company. So it looks like a security problem, but it's actually a trust problem if you really look at it. Um, and it has this interesting properties that it is a high value problem. It's simultaneously high pain to solve. Seems to require a lot of manual work and effort, and in some ways attaches to like a technical persona inside of the company, which we understand pretty decently. So it has some good things going for it, and that's sort of how we jumped onto the making a decision. Hey, okay, this is what we want to do about. This is what we want to build a startup around. And yeah, I think one of the other things that we wanted to do was we wanted to make sure that we build a large company fast. And so we made certain decisions downstream from that, which is we decided to be like a venture funded company. My previous company was a bootstrap company in comparison, but we've had about uh, 4 years in the sun, under the sun, basically, since we've been studying, and we've grown quite rapidly. Today, Sprinto has over 3,000 customers across about 70 countries. And yeah, I think in part, you know how they say that good markets look, decent founders look great. I started becoming a believer in that. Like, I think a lot of this is primarily because of the market that we are in, and we just seem to have picked a good problem to solve. And yeah, thankful for that.
No, very well said. And I think I want to kind of just pull a few more threads, right, on I think some of the things you spoke about, which is choosing the market, discovering the customer pain point, the problem statement, right? And in fact, I think if you can lean on both your 0 to 1 experience at RecruiterBox and then of course now at Sprinto, I think one of the key challenges I'm seeing with 0 to 1 stage founders, especially US, India, cross border, is kind of what problem statement to choose on, right? Like is
Mhm.
you have to choose like a critical problem statement. It's very easy today to kind of get sucked into some cool AI tech, right? Or something, dev tools is going viral, so why not I just create a dev tool, or just indexing on your own problem versus really deep diving into the market and to actually what real customer problems are. uh, what would be your advice to kind of 0 to 1 founders right now in terms of what are some of the things they should think about to be able to land on a right problem statement which can actually build like kind of a long term sustainable large business?
That's a great question. And um, yeah, I'll not pretend that I have answers to it. I'll explain what I did. Hopefully, it's helpful. Uh, so, just to dial back, when I was doing RecruiterBox, it was my first company as a founder. I had no idea what I was doing. Like, I've made every mistake in the book. Uh, and prime amongst them being that uh, we believed our strength was building products, and we sort of used that as a hammer to fight our way out of every battle, even though that wasn't the right tool to sort of use at the spot. So before we actually built RecruiterBox, I think we built about 4 or 5 products. Each one of them failed spectacularly, and I would say we a journey to RecruiterBox was rather Darwinian, in the sense that it was quite easy that we could have lost our way and not landed on what eventually made economic sense. But yeah, in many ways, we were lucky to land on the problem that we did. Um, so both I and my co-founder were quite conscious of this when we were starting up again, and we wanted to be a little bit deliberate about how we pick a problem statement and how do we go about it. Um, so uh, the one thing that we sort of promised ourselves is that to sort of take away the temptation that we feel like we have a great idea and then let's just start writing code. And then we said, okay, we're not going to write a single line of code until we sort of validated a few things, that we validated what we are building. And we did then basically what was probably the most uncomfortable thing uh, for us to do, which is talk to real people, validate the idea that you have, and even in the face of trying to sort of them being able to tell you that, hey, this is not necessarily a problem that I would pay for, or this is not a good problem that I would basically uh, pay money for. And I think the one thing that really helped me through that process during the time when we were sort of in like this discovery phase was there's this book called The Mom Test. I'm not sure if you've come across it, and I think it's a very small book. It's designed specifically for builders who have little to no empathy for basically how to do sales or how to basically try and learn harsh truths about what they are building. And I think it was an incredible book. It was extremely useful for us, and we sort of followed that like a Bible in the sense that we followed it to the T. We actually set up a bunch of conversations with prospective customers, and like 10 15 conversations down the line, it still didn't seem like we were getting anywhere. But closer to about the 20th conversation, basically like a thread started emerging. The point is, it always emerges backward. It's in the sense that you can't see it looking forward. But then we realized, okay, this is a problem that, by the way, we had faced, but also seems to be a high value problem. People seem to be doing like a bunch of decisions based on this, and that's roughly how we sort of meandered and landed on that. And we spent about a couple of months doing this, but I would say that was the most invaluable thing that I could have done at that point of time. Like, and the fact that we told ourselves that, hey, no writing any code, no product screens, no nothing, until you basically have these conversations and have like we used to make diligent notes about these things, etc. So I personally for me, and that worked out really well. So at least if you have like a rough idea about the space that you want to be in, and the kind of persona that you want to talk to, then I would highly recommend using that as a way to know, a way to find out if there's a high value, high urgency problem around that space. So that's the methodology that I followed. Worked really well for me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The Mom Test is just an incredible book, and I love the what you I think just use in the end, which is high value, high urgency. So I always kind of use a framework. I mean, both I used to use it even in my operating life, and now as an investor is kind of urgency, frequency, intensity. That in most of it has to actually check a lot of these boxes, right? For
Yes.
it to be kind of a sustainable product and business in the long term. But do you? So there is kind of the whole concept of founder market fit and right to win, right, which basically flows from the natural strengths of every founder and of every founding team. And I think for you, for example, as a repeat founder, there are a bunch of assets and experiences that you would have gathered as part of RecruiterBox. How much should founders lean into kind of the superpowers versus kind of going generically and saying that, look, I mean, I can take on kind of any market from first principles?
I think it's an important consideration. Uh, uh, there were a couple of ideas that we had, which we thought were great ideas. Um, but we didn't pick them because we didn't believe we were the right founders to go after them. They met every other criteria except the fact that we were perhaps not the best people to go after it. And uh, like I think every founder who's probably has to come up with their own way of evaluating what it is that their strengths are. But at least the framework that we had is that was a rather uh, simplistic framework. Uh, the way we were looking at it is that, hey, in basically any idea that we pick, you could basically draw like a two-dimensional graph. And the x-axis, you could basically say there is product risk. And the way we describe product risk is, uh, you asking yourself as to, can this be pulled off? Um, and on the y-axis is you have what we call as market risk, is basically this concept around, uh, do you think the market wants this? And just to give ideas of things that are high on product risk, but maybe close to zero on market risk, is autonomous driving. Uh, like especially if you circle back to about 5 years ago when we were trying to make this decision, like the autonomous driving was out there, but I don't think anybody's debating that it will be useful if it works. And the problem really is that, can you get it to work? To a reasonable degree of. So that's like a extreme case of high product risk but low market risk, and an example of high market risk and low product risk is pretty much anything that is like you're basically backing yourself in your ability to sort of create demand for something which could be relatively commoditized. Like I would take I know it's not an example from the technology space, but you could take something like liquid death. And fundamentally, what we asked ourselves as founders is that where do our strengths lie? And we backed ourselves as being product founders, and then not so much as like our strength wasn't exactly at GTM. And we said that, hey, if I had to pick a problem, like I would roughly pick a problem that's high on product risk but relatively low on market risk. So again, compliance fell into that category where at the time it looked like we aren't quite sure if this is like a service-based industry that can be productized, and I don't want to be another services company. So there was high product risk in that, but relatively low market risk in the sense that we were just based on the fact that there are so many services company and a cottage industry of everybody who helps people with compliance, that hey, the market risk was relatively low. So that was our internal framework. I'm sure this doesn't work with other founders, but it falls roughly in alignment with what you were saying. Like we got to back your strengths as a founder, and not every problem might be they might be great in isolation, but may not be a great for you.
Totally. And, this reminds me of that kind of classic quote, which I feel is very true, which is, first time founders tend to focus on product and second time founders tend to focus on distribution, right? So this is kind of, you're trying to almost de-risk market, right? Before even building the product out, because that's, I think, the market speaks. But shifting gears a little bit, and I think this will also be a good time to talk a little bit about the product
Mhm.
that you guys have built at Sprinto, especially the application layer, right? I mean, the competition is intense in pretty much every vertical, and I'm sure it's the same case in compliance as well, right? As a founder, how are you thinking about sources of differentiation for Sprinto, right? And from product or maybe even like non-product things, like how are you thinking about that?
So I feel first you sort of have to dispel this notion that any edge that you have is an enduring edge. Like it's easy to fall into this trap that hey, what is my sort of differentiator? Uh, and we sort of thinking about it ad infinitum. But one of the things that especially happens in a very competitive space is that uh, you, if you're lucky, you'd probably get like about 6 to 9 months of a race ahead, and your competition isn't stupid. They're going to see that hey, this is giving you an edge, and they're going to sort of react to it as well. So I think it's important to sort of to sort of dispel that notion that hey, we are looking for like a completely enduring sort of a product edge. Um, and the second thing is like it's important to not like in the reason I mentioned that is like sometimes when you force yourself to have like an extremely enduring edge, you start thinking about these things which are quite out there, and you sort once again fall into the trap of saying, hey, okay, this is something that nobody else could have thought about, but it potentially also means that it doesn't have resonance in the market, uh, right? So um, that's the one thing that we try and remember. The way we have looked at AI in our spaces, because there is basically like a software that work without AI. The natural trap that most people fall into is that hey, look at like this workflow or this basically is the way it currently works, and find spots to inject AI into. And I think uh, uh, most of the people that I see around are looking to do that, and that does give you like a leverage, and that does help you automate and build efficiencies into the system that you're building. But I feel like the real value comes when you reimagine from the ground up what your category might look like if it was built from like an AI first as a principle. Um, and that is sort of the thing that we are doing now. We've been doing for a few months now, and that is showing extremely large alpha for us. So we think that's going to be like our category of tools is called compliance and governance and risk, and that category of tools is going to see like a complete makeover, given if you design it from an AI first strategy. In many ways, what happens is this is in a way a harder problem for established businesses which tend to become victims of their own success. Like there's a certain business, it works a certain way, your value prop runs a certain way, and so it becomes harder and harder for you to basically turn around a large ship. But making that changes has given us a lot of benefit. So we actually believe like that this industry will get completely disrupted, um, uh, and like very few industries see that kind of a disruption in close quarters. Just less than 5 years ago is when the first automation tool for compliance came into being, and within small quarters, it's going to see yet another sort of leapfrog ahead in terms of the amount of or the way the shape and size and the form factor of this product that is going to see because of AI. So that's quite exciting. I'm not pretend that I have all the answers today, but I think we have the rough vector in which we need to get better at.
And then on the product side, I think specifically for the compliance use case, right? So of course the foundational kind of model layer is moving really fast, and both on open source, closed source, a lot of new capabilities are pretty much being shipped like every week right now. Um, in your roadmap and the way you guys are building product, right? How is that kind of getting reflected? Is this a use case where there is kind of, you need to ship a lot of things quickly, you need to kind of adopt the latest capabilities, or is this more about, hey, let's, if something is working, you kind of go deeper into that feature, make sure that works?
Um, Again, like one of the things that we are trying to sort of do this with is what I would call a certain degree of intellectual humility, and I'll explain what I mean by that in the context of taking an AI product to the market is concerned. Very often, tech first and product first teams they sort of imagine like this thing that's going to be great, and it's going to be like a game changer, and they try to take that to market, uh, and the flaw in that is that when you already build something, the market is going to give you feedback on that, and you're going to sort of iterate around that local maxima, whatever it is, the first thing that you built. Um, so what we are typically doing as a strategy is like we think of ourselves as we're building like a platform, and the other way to think about it is we're building like the right Lego blocks, so to speak. So I'll give you an example of something that we did in AI. So there are some obvious places where AI will be injected in our workflows, and we did that. But then we realized that every time we go to the market and we listen to our customers, there is some modification of this, or some other place where they would like AI to be used, and we haven't have built that. And then it gets into like this common problem that every product team has, which is, hey, this customer needs this X, but 99% of my other customers don't need this X. So where does this go into the roadmap? Uh, do I build a thing for the person who is yelling the most, or and et cetera, et cetera. And our way of solving that is we've completely platformized those things. So we actually have what we call as an AI studio, which we expose to the users, by the way. We have workflow studios, which is where people can sort of build their own workflows. And there's a bunch of things like that, which are where we've extracted out the general patterns that we see. Um, and then what we do with every time you work with a customer is we're trying to do what's right by the customer and making sure that the product is built in a manner that meets their environment. Especially as you work with larger and larger customers, the environment become more and more complex, and it's rarely that a product will work off the shelf. And the challenge becomes that, hey, how do you go to build something that works across a large number of customers yet not sort of fall into like this feature creep kind of a problem? So what we do is like we try to extract out what are the right Lego blocks. And for each customer, we sort of configure this Lego blocks in a certain manner that delivers value to them. And when we go to the next customer, these sort of Lego blocks are put together in different ways. So specifically, like we allow our customers to build their own AI agents on top of our platform, and that gets them their specific value. So in our case, there are various areas, like there is vendor risk management, there is access risk management, there is basically policies, governance, risk, and a bunch of other things, and we allow our customers to sort of configure their own agents on top of these things. And that gives them a massive leverage on top of anything that's off the shelf. And that helps us as a company to also build common patterns, and sort of instead of having to build like a feature that's going to be useful for like a small subset of your customers and just create visual noise for pretty much 99% of your other customers. So that's a muscle that we have developed well as a company now. It works really well for us. And again, I don't know if this is a generalized principle that I would work elsewhere. As founders, we tend to get our blinders on, and your business a lot better than others. I wouldn't necessarily take this as a generic advice, but in our space, it seems to work really well.
In terms of the closed source versus open source kind of model ecosystems, any kind of views there, and how the movements in those ecosystems impact you as Sprinto? Because I mean, at the application layer, my assumption is that whatever kind of comes out, you will kind of incorporate it, and kind of it benefits you in a way.
Yes, that's a good question. Like the way we deal with it is that we sort of assuming that the LLMs, wherever they need to be injected, are always going to be interchangeable based on a bunch of factors. Maybe they grow in their capabilities. Maybe there are cost changes that happen. Maybe tomorrow we have to build like our own, maybe not a foundational model ourselves, but like something that's fine-tuned to our use case, and that needs to be injected there. So we treat LLMs, at least at the application layer, as placeholders. That's our general way of sort of insulating ourselves from from whatever happens in that world, because we don't directly play in that world. But to be able to maintain a certain degree of sort of air gap between that and us. While we do that, we of course have like a bunch of infrastructure built to make sure that if I do replace an LLM by the other, whether open or closed source, like whether our evals are working as well as we expect them to, blah blah blah. So those guardrails have been built. But yes, the general strategy, if you ask, is not to sort of get married into or make ideological decisions about that space yet. So we just want to make sure that we are sort of insulated from it.
Got it. And then I think coming to the GTM side, because that I think that's actually a little different about this particular wave, right? Because GTM has also changed a lot in addition to build how product is getting built out, right? And you have kind of navigated both eras, right? In a way, I mean, you built in the SaaS era, then you started Sprinto, then of course AI happened, and now you're building Sprinto here. How has GTM changed as you are now building this company out, right? And what have you been forced to do differently?
That's a good question. Because I'm an engineer first, I'm going to use an analogy here. There is when you first started getting all of these coding agents, there was this increasing talk about anybody can code, and that's true. And a lot of talk is about basically the fact that you can wipe code. Anybody who doesn't even need to know programming or not as good programmers, they can sort of spin up an app, and that's definitely going to increase the accessibility of coding as a practice to like a large number of people. These coding agents are making existing good programmers like an order or two orders of magnitude better. So, and what I'm really seeing, if you ask me the question, is that it's actually increasing the gap between basically a decent and a great programmer. So that wasn't something that was intuitive for me. That this is like, I used to think that coding agents are going to sort of level the playing space, so to speak. But I actually see the opposite thing happening, which is like the rift between like a good programmer and a mediocre programmer is basically only widening. Like good programmers can actually use these agents in massive ways. So what like we are all old enough to know, there's just will be this concept of a 10x engineer, and I feel like there are now 100x engineers as a result, because if you can use these agents in a good way, you're really amplifying and multiplying your ability. And the reason I bring that up is because it's not quite there yet, but I suspect a similar thing is going to happen in GTM. Is that the principles of GTM haven't changed, like the fundamental things. Like in AI, we often focus a lot more on what's changing and this is new and that is new. But at the end of the day, there are some basic principles of how to take something to market. At the end of the day, human attention is the ultimate limiting factor to all GTM. And some of those things haven't changed. And what's going to happen is that there's going to be a ton of automation around things which were otherwise hard. about finding signals about who's really in the market, doing outreach to them. You don't have to write your own emails. Somebody else will, the agent will write them for you. You can sort of blast these emails to everyone, blah blah blah, like things that used to be sort of hard for let's say smaller or less mature teams to do. They will get more access to these things. But I feel like fundamentally in GTM, what's going to also happen is that the difference between like good GTM teams and decent GTM teams is going to widen. And the deciding factor there is going to be about teams who have a more um, like a more uh, authentic handle on what it is that their ICP does when they want to make a buying decisions. Where do they go? Who do they ask? What are the factors that are involved in the buying decision, which is basics of GTM again. Like I'm not saying anything profound or new over here, but the teams that understand this better and are able to basically build a GTM engine on top of that, they will become infinitely better at building their GTM strategies as compared to teams who are just doing more slop, but at a faster pace. Right. So like the obvious things, right? Like basically you're going to start seeing a lot more SDR emails go out, which are not written by SDRs. And pretty much everyone's going to do that. That's like the obvious low-hanging fruit. And what is that eventually going to mean is that at the receiving end, there's still a human with a certain amount of attention span and capability of going through email. And like the number of startups who are just bombarding them with that email is going to just keep on multiplying, and at some point it is just going to get harder and harder to rise above that noise. But like a good GTM team who knows what to talk about, and when, and how to reach out, basically is going to find an edge. So I generally feel like the problem statement is going to be that the net amount of noise that we are all exposed to is going to find like a new high, and that's only going to make it harder for GTM teams to stand out.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I remember when I started in venture 15 years back, and if I compare that to today, it almost seems like we are seeing the resurgence of marketing and storytelling, right? I think
Yes.
the noise is so high today. So almost in my world, I almost compare it to the whole kind of consumer goods industry, right? Or the FMCG industry, where, classically those teams, like a Unilever would spend so much of time
Yes.
talking about, hey, it's ultimately you're selling commodities. A shampoo is a shampoo, a soap is a soap, right? But how do you tell the story around it? And I feel that that is, and it's kind of a new muscle, because I think SaaS became over-indexed on sales versus branding and storytelling. So that's a big shift. To your to the customer conversations that kind of you are having, what are some of the concerns that you are seeing in terms of questions that they have or apprehensions that they have with respect to AI adoption, right? And I'm kind of generalizing it. Of course, feel free to answer from kind of Sprinto's standpoint, and because also specifically you are kind of operating in that area of compliance and governance and security, and where my data is going, and those kind of things as well, right? Shed some light on that.
Sure. And again, like while there is a lot more uh, new things that are in the space, again, there's a lot more jargon and different things that people worry about. There's a lot of funny new rituals and song and dance about some of these things. It's funny how some of the principles remain the same. Like when I was talking about when I was building RecruiterBox, the fundamental idea is this, right? Like, hey, when you are building like any sort of a cloud software, whether it's AI enabled or not, but especially when it's AI enabled, it's like my data is on your servers, and I want some assurance that you're going to keep this data safe and secure. And it all comes down to this from this very simple principle, right? So fundamentally, the way you react to these things haven't changed either. Yes, the set of things that you'll have to talk about. You talk about reliability, hallucinations, data privacy concerns, and so on and so forth. And with depending on the space and the size of the customer that you're talking about, the set of things can be different that they worry about. and you need to have, especially when you're like an enterprise B2B SaaS company, then you need to have good answers to that. But the simple two things that I would say, again, which are not very profound, but it's funny how many companies don't do this, especially when they are early stages, that a uh, just document your AI philosophy, like how you are an AI first product. Instead of making it something that is verbally explained by your salesperson or your sales engineer or somebody else, it helps to document it down. And the simple fact of writing it down in a format that you know will be shareable, and you can update it, just makes things so much more concrete. You realize that you have sometimes you haven't thought enough about it, and then you start thinking about it. B, because it is shared, it's sort of like, it just carries. As a founder, you can't be in every conversation, and you don't quite know when these concerns are going to come up. But the fact that you've documented it down instantly creates like this thing that can be automatically shared. You can test out things. You can get feedback on it, and so on and so forth. The second thing that I say again, which is not a new principle, but that has happened with security and then now extends to AI, is it helps to sort of align yourself to some standards instead of rolling out your own. Yes, you can talk about your own philosophy of this is how you take care of AI safety and hallucinations, etc., and a bunch of things, and prompt injections, and there's a bunch of problems that happen, but helps to align with a standard. And there is a bunch of standards that are out there. There's like an OS 10 about around AI. There is an ISO 42001 standard, and you know. I can have a separate conversation about which one of these might work given your specific scenario. But the point is that uh, instead of you coming up with something bespoke way of talking about your AI, it always helps to sort of align with the standard and say that, hey, okay, we align with this standard of AI safety, and if possible, even get yourself audited. That's like a next level of escalation if you want to go there. But basically, the fact that you go it according to an industry accepted standard just lends that much more credibility to what you're saying. So these are the two simple things that I would basically say, and that will give you like 80% of the benefit. Of course, now the remaining 20% depends on your specific use case, but you get most of the benefit by just simply documenting it and then aligning to like a industry standard.
And then just to clarify, Girish, the AI philosophy document, because that's a great suggestion, and not heard too much about that from other people. Is that supposed to be an internal document, or is
No,
that
it's a
something that
shareable
it's a
document.
shareable document? Okay.
Yeah, that's the whole goal of it. Like
Okay.
it is basically a document that you share. That's intentionally designed to so that's something that other people can look at.
Got it. Well, that's a great suggestion. Uh, Coming to pricing, what is the on-ground reality that you're seeing with respect to pricing models, right? And especially we're talking about kind of AI-first pricing models like usage-based versus consumption-based. What is the reality right now versus compared to kind of the per seat whole SaaS era pricing?
That's a good question. Um, Again, it's evolving as we speak. So I wouldn't place my bets just yet. But I'm definitely seeing a resurgence of basically an usage-based or an outcome-based pricing, and sometimes a combination of both of them. Um, and I'm seeing all companies testing this out. There are, of course, companies who are on a sort of a massive hyperscaling mode where they are trying to sort of uh, factor this into their like sort of absorb the cost, so to speak. But that's basically meaning that all SaaS calculations of gross margins are sort of going out of the table. Like SaaS is supposed to be like a high gross margin business, but that's not really happening there. They're literally exchanging 90 cents on a dollar. That is sort of thing that's happening. But again, it depends on the objectives of your company. Like some of these markets, like most notoriously Cursor sort of believes like it's about an habit creation product, and then you can figure out how to optimize the your cost structure based on it eventually, including rolling out your own LLM maybe. So your costs are all your own. Uh, but the more interesting one that I see is companies like FinAI. where if you really see, they've done like this combination of an outcome and usage-based pricing, where fundamentally they're saying that it's a cost per resolution of a ticket, and that's attractive for a buyer, because a resolution is eventually the outcome that I care about, and it inherently also looks at usage, because when you have large volumes, the price goes up with that. So I personally felt that was like a beautiful pricing model, and it works in that particular area. But when I try to apply it to my space, like I'm looking for something that's very similar. I feel like it may not be possible in every single space to find something that's nicely fits the way it did in the case of customer resolution. But that's what I'm seeing. But in terms of the resonance on the other side, uh, I think the market's slowly and steadily shifting. Like the CFOs and the CIOs on the other end are slowly warming up to the idea of basically outcome and usage-based pricing. Uh, and I'm also interestingly sometimes seeing this thing where uh, you sort of say as a company, as an application layer company, that hey, this is an application, but I'm happy to plug in your chat gpt usage credits into mine, like, because this is built on top of chat gpt. So in some ways then the usage is yours, but you're basically paying for the SaaS. Again, it's on the fringes. I don't know if that will gain traction, but I've seen that in a couple of cases where people are using that kind of a model, where it's kind of win-win both for the application developer as well as the buyer. There the issues start happening where you may not get the same performance with every LLM, and then how do you sort of neutralize that, etc. But bunch of interesting things happening there. I was very recently at a CFO conference, and this was the talk of the town, where people are talking about various kinds of pricing structures and how it affects their margins and so on and so forth. But the jury is out there, to be honest.
And then in these kind of business model discussions, are you seeing any nuances versus, let's say, a SMB customer versus a mid-market customer versus a kind of more larger enterprise customer? Are there kind of considerations different?
Yes. So clearly, just to talk of the two ends of the spectrum, the SMB customer wants more, is happier with like a flat price, and they tend to shy away a little bit from the usage-based price, whereas an enterprise understands it far more, and they tend to have just a larger degree of flexibility and tolerance for basically a usage-based pricing.
Got it. Coming to fundraising, and I think it'll be great to get your thoughts, because your first startup was bootstrapped, and this time, of course, you've raised venture capital. As as you kind of have gone through kind of the kind of whole fundraising process, especially kind of in this age of AI, right? What are some of the things that you feel a lot of other AI founders might find counterintuitive or might not be aware of, right? Because there is enough kind of classical jargon and classical knowledge out there.
Um, Again, nothing profound or completely counterintuitive or contrarian. But one of the things that I'm especially seeing in the Bay Area is that investing has truly become tech first again. There was this sort of this phase in between, before the AI boom, um, where investors sort of didn't quite believe that there is an edge in the tech itself. Uh, uh, and any edge in the technology would basically get eroded out over time, and they would look at other things, where basically, do you have any domain specific knowledge, or anything that sort of gives you an edge, or some massive distribution edge that you have, that your competitors will be finding it hard to get over, etc. But I'm increasingly seeing investors now sort of getting that a genuine enthusiasm around the tech changing the world itself, and it's not just other things, where other things will be coming most. And it's important for us as founders to sort of recognize that that's basically a shift in the mindset that has happened. And I, for one, am glad for it. But it's important to pitch yourself as basically somewhere where you're going to see the technology is going to make it like a be the alpha, and it's evolving at such a fast pace. Then what that other thing, it also means that you as a company have to be positioned as someone who not only may have an edge today, but how you're going to continue maintaining that edge over time. And what that means is the only superpower that you have as a company is the speed of execution that you can pull off. So again, it's gone down to like basics of those sort. Like, hey, are you basically, do you look like a team who would basically continue executing fast enough? And are you basically like a technology index team or not? These seem to be mattering a lot more as compared to maybe 4 or 5 years ago.
And I think just double clicking on that, and this is something I've been thinking about actually, especially at pre-seed, seed. How do you think founders should communicate that they're executing fast? Because once you obviously get to revenue and all, then it's straightforward, right? But especially at early stages, right? How do you, and especially when you're running a tight fundraising process, you are trying to raise money, you are kind of out in the market for about whatever 4 to 8 weeks. You're not spending that much time, right? How do you differentiate yourself? What are those proxies that you can put out there?
Honestly, the only thing that works outside of you having uh, some pedigree of having proven this in the past is basically your customer saying it on your behalf. So it's 10x more useful when basically a customer says that, hey, these guys started talking with us on this date. They didn't have what we needed, but they sort of iterated fast and reacted fast and got us this. That's a much more valuable signal than you shouting it off the rooftop saying that, hey, we are a fast team and whatever. Like I have this founder or this CTO of this pedigree and so on and so forth.
That is so true. It totally reminds me of one of my portfolio companies from this fund, and it's exactly what happened. Where they only had like one or two customers. I still remember it was like pre-seed, and one of the customers clearly said it, like even without being asked in this direction, said that look, what I just love is that these guys just ship fast. I ask them for
Yeah.
something, I discuss a problem, and like 2 3 days, down the road, there is some basic feature that's out there, right? So
Yeah. So yeah, that generally been my experience as well. It just gets amplified naturally.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Cool. Final question, and this is going to more the context of US India cross border, right? Of course, you have been a cross border founder. Uh, what has been that one harder lesson, right? Especially as you have been kind of navigating across both these geographies that you would like to share with other cross border founders out there?
Part of this is something that I've learned secondhand and not necessarily at first hand, but for what it's worth, I think if you're especially a founder who had some degree of this didn't happen to us, but like I've with like a close set of peer founders that I've spoken with, like sometimes you basically have some PMF in India, and you sort of automatically assume that that means PMF in a different geo, notably US. And translating that doesn't quite work. Um, so in some cases it does. So for example, it turns out that if your customer segment is early stage startups, which was our original customer segment, for example, there tends to be a surprising degree of homogeneity there. The CTOs here and there tend to think similarly. That used to be our ICP, and a lot of that lessons, whatever you learn here, are easily translatable over there. But like I've since spoken to like a bunch of founders in different spaces like HR, procurement, finance, and so on and so forth, and I'm learning that. Those whatever lessons you have in one geo don't necessarily, or one segment don't translate automatically, and just being mindful of that saves a lot of heartburn. So I would basically recommend treating each geo, especially if you're working in these kind of non-technology ICPs that you deal with, to be a little careful about when you sort of translate that, and almost treat it like a 0 to 1 again, and just be again open to any feedback that you might be receiving, because people tend to optimize for different things. The sensitivities to cost and people and a bunch of things are just completely different. So the way the teams get structured are different, the organizational politics are different, and so on and so forth. So that's one thing that I would say is that as a founder, if I were to ever do something again, and then I just treat US as a market as a completely different 0 to 1 journey than assuming that a bunch of things, including my product, would just work automatically if I just bring it from here to there.
Yeah, and that's why I think a big change I'm seeing in the approach of especially cross-border founders now is in the SaaS era, you kind of still raised a seed round and did a 0 to 1 in India, did some offshore stuff. I think in AI, I'm now pretty much seeing that people are landing here from day zero. And
Yes.
and they're
Yes.
realizing otherwise it's impossible to compete.
Yeah, that's a completely different way of circumventing the problem. So if this is your eventual market, let it be your first market.
Great. This has been an amazing conversation, Girish. I think I actually learned a lot, and I think specifically the insights that you brought in, because you have kind of operated in the pre-AI era as well, and now you are kind of at the forefront of the AI era. I think those contrasts, those nuances, especially with kind of a US-India cross-border context as well, I think they were incredibly helpful. Thank you so much for taking out time.
Thanks for having me, Shomitra. I enjoyed the conversation as well.